I was annoyed by the summer cabin. I understand that's an odd thing to say, but it's accurate. We would spend at least a week there each year, and sometimes we would even go up there for vacations. One year, we spent Christmas in the cabin, and it was a terrible experience. The cabin was my family's vacation home on the shores of Lake Erie, a modest two-bedroom cabin with a loft up in the eaves. It had a little kitchen, a beautiful living room with a fireplace, and 2 bedrooms downstairs, one for each of my 2 sisters and one for me. Since Mom and Dad always slept in the loft, they were unaware of the oddity I saw from my bed in the smaller of the 2 bedrooms. Large gaps between the floorboards on the cabin's floor allowed for a view of the interior. Dad kept saying he would repair the floorboards, but he never did. I guess Dad decided it was worth the occasional spider or bug looking up through the floorboards if his socks didn't get hung on protruding wood because they were smooth, ancient wood that didn't splinter. Bugs, spiders, and other pests were the least of my concerns. I didn't notice it at first, of course. The first time we stayed at the cabin, I was just amazed. Everything was great to have a cabin to ourselves, and I checked everything out from top to bottom before going outside. I spent hours swimming in the lake, removing our canoes, climbing trees, and playing pretend before falling asleep deeply after supper. I'm not even convinced that I dreamed that first night, but I couldn't wait to do it all over again the following day. However, during that first week, I started to notice strange noises coming from beneath the flooring. The scuffling sound, which seemed to come from anything moving underneath, made me think of small animals or insects. Sometimes I caught a glimpse of them between the crevices in the boards, but they were always too fast for me to notice. According to Dad, it was most likely just rats because many of these old cottages had rodents dwelling under the floorboard. He placed traps in the kitchen so that if they were only living under the house, they wouldn't be disturbed. But nothing ever got past the traps, and Dad wrote them off as good-natured insects. Except for me, everyone appeared to be well-behaved. I never slept like I did the first night again, and sometimes the scuffling under the boards kept me up at night. As I lay there listening to their movements, I would assume that they were much too big to be mice. If they were rats, they were huge rats, and sometimes I thought they may try to get through the flooring. We always had a fantastic time there, but I prayed every night that I would go to sleep before I was awakened by the scratching noises. My parents bought the house when I was 4 years old, and we went there every year until I was 12. There was plenty of time for me to listen, to investigate the sounds, and to lie awake in terror. We spent 2 weeks in the house when a storm knocked out the electricity when I was 10. After the flooding caused the grid to fall down and the entire town lost electricity, my parents decided to stay there until things calmed. It was awful. Every night, I just laid there and listened to the scrabbling of whatever was underneath. No matter how many cushions I placed on my head, how much I swam and ran, or how fatigued I got, nothing ever helped me fall asleep. I finally had enough of the scrambling and clawing that kept me awake at night after 8 nights in a row. Around 11 o'clock, the scratching started up again, and I growled. I was tired and grumpy because I had had enough. I pushed myself out of bed and landed hard on the boards, then stomped about as loudly as I could to scare them. I stomped around for a few minutes before the noise under my boots suddenly stopped. I stood there feeling pleased of myself and got back into bed. If I had known it would be that easy, I would have finished it weeks ago. I closed my eyes and finally drifted off to something like sleep, but it was only for a brief minute, and for the first time since that first night I felt safe. I heard the scrabbling again after hardly an hour had passed. The sound was so loud that I assumed something was trying to get in through the floor. I looked over the side of the bed and saw something squeezing between the cracks. It was hard to tell because it was dark, but I thought I saw fingers digging up and through the holes in the woods. Despite the dirty fingers and the dark liquid the wood made them run with as it chopped, it kept pushing. I was immobilized by fear, my 10-year-old brain not knowing what to do, but I knew that the floors would groan if I did nothing. Reaching to the edge of my bed with a shaking hand, I found the baseball bat I had leaned on. I had been preparing because baseball tryouts were coming up, but I had not expected to use it for this. I leaned over and swung the hand as hard as I could. Though it didn't stop right away, it pulled its fingers back under the boards after a couple more powerful shots. I hoped they were broken, but they probably were, so I waited for them to come back while I held the bat. I sat there staring at the floor for a time, watching while something worse than a finger gazed back at me. It looked very human and had one bloodshot eye. I looked at the bat, and it clattered on the floor as I drew back into bed. My parents came right away when I yelled. I tried to explain what I had seen to them, but they just thought I was dreaming. They finally allowed me to sleep with them in the loft, and I remained there until we departed for our homes. I was never left alone in the room, not even during the day, and I wasn't bothered at that moment either. But then I saw that wild eye again and heard all those fingers fumbling. We didn't go back the next year because Dad couldn't get the time off approved or something, and I tried to avoid the week-long trip they planned when I was 12. I still periodically had nightmares about those fingers and eyes, and I didn't want to return. I was old enough to be independent at 12, and I think I could have been if my sister hadn't tried to do the same. I had assured her that she could take my room, but she refused. Mom was adamant that we would all enjoy going and that none of us would be staying at home. I grabbed my bat and a torch, and during the second week of July we set out for the lake cottage. I tried my hardest to be completely exhausted the first day. I spent hours swimming, hiking, and exploring before dozing off at the dinner table as darkness fell. Since I was tired, I reasoned that if I didn't annoy them, they would leave me alone. By the time it was time to go to bed, I had fallen onto the tiny mattress and was out before my head hit the pillow all the way. I thought I might have finally broken the pattern as I fell asleep, that I had managed to fall asleep before the itching started. When I was awakened in the early hours by the scratching, I sat up, cursed, and slapped my pillow. It was louder than it had been. Peering over the edge of the bed, I could see something moving beneath the boards, and it made a sound like animal claws, like nails on a chalkboard. I thought I was having nightmares again when its fingers began to stab through the wooden slats. Again, it was pressuring. It strained at the boards, bending and distorting them till I thought it may break through the floor at any second. Several of the fingers were bent oddly, and the tips seemed to have healed after being broken, so I was prepared to give them something to heal from when I picked up the bat again. I tried to tear those fingers free as the eye came back to glare at me, but they dragged them back in as the blood ran down. It was bloodshot and awful, and it slid away from me when I hit the floor planks. I tried to fall asleep again, but couldn't. Every creak in the house, every whine of the wood, every scrape of a tree branch, and every rustle of the wind all sounded like the scraping returning. I finally fell asleep, but it was almost dawn when I woke up, and I was tired and sleepy. I felt scratchy for the rest of the day. When my mother asked if I was feeling sick, I told her I was okay. Later, though, I did take a nap. I wanted to give it my all when it came back that night, but I got more than I bargained for. As I sat in the middle of my bed, unable to sleep, I heard a scrabbling that I had never heard before. A thousand-fingered creature seemed to be scuttling down there, driving its nails in as it went. Several fingers fumbled at the wood as the planks began to bulge and shake. I was unable to catch them all when they began to puncture the wood. I swung my bat repeatedly, smashing fingers and breaking nails, but it felt like there was an army beneath the floorboard. I kept hitting them, and their fingers snapped audibly, but the wood was starting to rise. I screamed for everyone, not just for myself, and as they started to press up and come into the room, I caught a glimpse of what was underneath. When I tried to scream, it became stuck in my throat. I had no idea what to think when I saw the eyes looking up from the floor. I first believed it to be rodents, and then I believed it to be a single individual. People were trying to get in and out of the area under the floor, all naked and skeletal. As they tried to pry up more boards, I counted 4, 5, maybe 6, and their numbers kept growing. Which number was under the floor? My flesh crawled at the idea of so many half-starved humans packed beneath our summer home. I noticed ants coming down a hill. When I heard thunderous footsteps coming toward my chamber, I believed there might have been a dozen of them. Then the door suddenly opened, allowing the hall light to enter. They looked up as I did, and when they saw him, their eyes widened in amazement. In addition to being shocked, I felt hopeful since someone had at last saved my life. When Dad saw what was underneath the floor, he stopped saying, "What in the hell are you?" They saw him too and tried to break through the floor, but he didn't give them any time. He came in, grabbed me, and left, closing the door and laying a chair under it from the hallway. After that, he called the police, woke up my sisters, and led us all to the loft. Then he sat up there with a pistol, which I didn't know he had until that particular time, while he waited for the cops to come or for some of the people from the floor to come out. When the cops came, he went down to let them in and came back to keep us safe. That's how my dad was always a guardian. Our claim was somewhat corroborated by the pushed-up boards, but the cops discovered nothing. When I told them how long it had been going on and what I had heard and seen, they searched beneath the house and in the nearby woods before giving up. Although they found nothing, they did discover a screen that had been jimmied open on the back side of the house and other signs that something was moving below it. Dad apparently heard a story from the sheriff who came out to check things out, but he didn't tell me until I was older. The lake house was so cheap that working stiffs like my parents could afford it since it was the site of a terrible incident. The former owners, a man, a woman, and 3 children, suddenly disappeared and were never found. Despite searching everywhere, they were unable to find their hair or hide. All they found was that there were enough pushed-up boards in the space I currently occupy to accommodate a small group of people. We then bought a timeshare in North Carolina when my parents sold the lake house. I still dream sometimes about the people that lived under that cabin, even though it was 10 years ago. If you find a cottage for sale on Lake Air, do your homework and proceed with utmost caution. There must be more than termites in the foundation. You are likely familiar with the sensation of discovering that your children have viewed something improper or frightening without your awareness in this day and age. For this reason, I don't allow my children, boy 4, daughter 6, to visit YouTube unattended. Every few days after school, though, I let them check out any movie they want from our neighborhood library. Since the only library in my little rural Wisconsin town has a pitiful selection of mostly children's films, I feel rather confident that they won't find anything frightening or violent there. My daughter chose to watch Dora the Explorer on Friday. I was shocked to discover that the DVD had no colorful print when I opened it at home. When the theme song began and Dora and Diego were seen racing around, I stayed to make sure it was Dora because it was a simple black color and I was worried it was a different DVD in the wrong box. After that, I went to make dinner. My kid began to scream and appeared hungry, but I was too busy trying to figure out what my daughter was talking about when she repeated telling him over the weekend that she was looking forward to seeing him trip and making a clawing motion with her hands that looked like a Venus flytrap. She claimed to have seen it on Dora when I asked her why. When I questioned what she saw, she replied that it was the metal mouth on the ground. I let it go and prepared him some food after my son's cries became so loud that I believed his vocal cords could break. We returned to the library the following Friday, and I suggested that they choose a family-friendly film to watch. We went back to Dora after my son chose Finding Nemo. After having trouble using the scanner, the elderly woman behind the desk went to the closet to use a backup scanner. My son was furious because my daughter continued making the hand motion while she was away. I discovered that the Finding Nemo DVD was blank once more when I opened it. This time, it had the standard tan/beige color of unprinted CDs. Although it was very different from what I recall, it was indeed Finding Nemo. Some of the topics must have been too complex for me to understand as a child. Because Nemo was the only one who survived, Marlin appeared to harbor a great deal of bitterness toward him. In several situations, his rage bordered on abuse. There were also scenes of the young girl from the dental office aggressively attempting to hurt, electrocute, choke, and torment the fish, making her appear much more nasty. Additionally, the voices sounded a little strange, but that might just be my memory. Is it just me, or do I have a serious problem with this library? I'm concerned that my children are seeing inappropriate content. Alright. Change or update. I asked my kid what she saw when she watched Dora the other day because I was genuinely afraid and felt like I was going mad. She claimed that Dora's key had been taken by the fox figure known as Swiper, as usual, and that she had used one of those metal mouths to restrain the fox. Her response to my question about what she meant by metal mouth was, "You know, like in the backyard." I discovered that we have a section of the fence with fox traps because we have some outdoor pets, such as hens and rabbits. My kid informed me that the Swiper was bleeding from its teeth after becoming lodged in the metal mouth. Dora didn't mean to hurt him, she just wanted to recoup all the swiping he had done, she stated. In order to watch Dora on DVD, I returned to the library. I checked the Dora and Nemo DVDs at the library, and neither one was blank. They were just regular fucking DVDs with vibrant character printing. All of the fucking DVDs were normal when I went through them. I went to borrow Dora, Nemo, and another Barbie that they had seen a long time ago. After taking them, The woman behind the desk leaned over to grab stickers that indicated the due date. She spent a weird amount of time searching for stickers after taking the DVDs down with her. I opened them when I arrived at my car, but they were all blank. Even though they were perfectly normal when I checked at the library, they were all blank white DVDs. I loaded them into my laptop one at a time and quickly looked through them. The one about Finding Nemo appeared to be the same as the one we had previously seen. In the Dora one, a swiper was shown perish in a fox trap. Additionally, the Barbie one depicted Barbie as hostile and envious. She poisoned a rival ballerina Barbie in one scenario, and it shows her gasping, spluttering, and vomiting. I returned to the library and asked the woman at the front desk if she may go check out the children's area. I excused her by saying that there was a book on the floor that had been puked on. After she departed, I looked under the desk and discovered the real DVDs of the films I had just purchased. I made the decision to enter the storage cupboard behind her workstation. There were boxes within. A crate was filled to overflowing with blank DVDs when I opened it.